So here we are in glorious tide mills in between the towns of Newhaven and Seaford behind me to test the Tamron 18-300 f3.5-6.3 DI III-A VC VXD. Now this is an APS-C lens with a focal range from 18-300 as mentioned before, and in 35mm terms it equates to about a 27-450. So let's go find out what it's all about. So if you're traveling or you're concerned about weight or how much equipment you're taking with you, something like an 18-300 is a fantastic compromise to capture what you need to capture, especially if you don't know what you're going to get. So anything from the environment, people, and even a little bit of bird watching like we're trying to do today, it is a fantastic option for that. One important thing to mention is that this lens is an extending zoom. So that's what I mean by an extending zoom. A lot of lenses will have the extending mechanism within the lens. Now what this means for this lens is that dust could potentially get inside these grooves and the zoom mechanism. However, it's nice to know that Tamron have bothered to make this lens as weather resistant as possible by including rubber gaskets both at the front and at the rear of the lens. I'm not sure if I would call this lens strictly budget. It is £500 plus after all, but I certainly wouldn't call it premium either. However, it was nice to know that it does feel very premium in the hand. Now it is made out of plastic, and the zoom rings, however, are made out of rubber, or not made out of rubber, but they have a rubber covering for grip. In terms of operation, I wouldn't say that the zoom ring is necessarily a one-finger operation. You probably could do it if you really force it. I would say you would have to grab a big handful to actually twist it from 18-300. However, it does feel very positive and very solid in the hand. The focus ring, however, can be operated with just one finger, which is really, really handy in case you are manually focusing and you really need to make those tiny little adjustments. Again, that feels super positive as well in the hand. And here you have your lock switch, which will stop the lens from extending. So just to deal with the body that we're using with this lens, we're using an EOS R50, and some of you might think it's a bit of an unusual body to use with this lens. But the main reason why I chose the R50 is I wanted to see how this lens would perform in terms of its balance and its comfort with a very small and lightweight body. And by the way, the lens weighs approximately 630 grams. So right now I'm testing the minimum focus distance on this lens, and that's actually a really, really interesting point to talk about, simply because the range on this lens, the zoom range on this lens, is huge, 18-300. Now at 18mm, you do have a minimum focus distance of 0.15 meters or 15 centimeters. And at the long end, at 300mm, you have a minimum focus distance of 0.9 meters or 99 centimeters, which I think is pretty impressive. And another thing to mention as well is that this lens won't do 1-to-1 macro, but it will do 1-to-2 macro. Again, really, really helpful if you want to do some close-up work like this. So one important thing to mention about this lens is that it's a variable aperture zoom. That means f3.5 to f6.3 for this particular lens. Now the holy grail in terms of lenses, as everyone probably knows, especially zooms, is to have a constant aperture. Now if this lens was a 2.8 f4.5-6, at this zoom range it would be huge, heavy and quite unwieldy. I certainly would not be able to use it with an R50. However, saying that, this variable aperture means that it keeps the lens fairly small and portable, as we've mentioned before. But more importantly, when you have a lens of this length at 300mm, you're actually using the length of the lens to create that defocused look. So when you pick up subject, it does have the ability to actually create that separation between foreground and background as well. Which brings us on to lens compression as well. Now, due to the way that these lenses are designed, telephotos I mean, it means that whenever you focus in on a subject, it has the ability to compress the distance between the subject matter and the background. So that means that it looks like it's closer to you. Now, without being a lens construction expert, I'm not exactly sure as to why that happens. However, I do know that with all primes and all zooms above usually 200 or even 100 mil and above, it means that it creates that natural compression, and usually it's a very unique look to lenses of this kind. Now, in terms of the autofocus performance, I've actually found it to be excellent today, both from static subjects and being punchy and quick to autofocus, but also to tracking as well. Now, the lens is compatible with eye focus as well. We didn't use it today simply because I didn't feel the need to actually use it, but it is compatible with cameras that do support eye focus. In terms of focus tracking, again, combination between body and lens, I found it to be incredibly sure-footed when it was tracking a bird in flight, something that I do get a bit nervous about because I'm not really a wildlife photographer, but I did find that it did a supreme job in keeping the bird in focus in full flight. So all that's left to say really is to give you my final thoughts after using this lens for a few hours on a really blustery day here at Tide Mills. Now, I'm not going to overthink this too much. I think the real strength of this lens really is in that extreme focal range that it's got. 18 to 300 or 27 to 450 in full frame terms. That is huge, and that is going to give you a lot of flexibility if you're aiming to travel with this lens and you want to lighten the load by leaving those heavier lenses behind, especially if you know if you're going to be shooting a wide range of subjects, from wide all the way to the telephoto end. From that point of view, it does a fantastic job. It's lightweight, it's compact, it's incredibly well built as well, and also it happens to be weather sealed, which is something that we would not have found in lenses at this price range years ago. So overall, I think Tamron have done a really, really good job. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.